Welcome to Friends and Fiction. 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories. Novelists Mary Kay Andrews, Kristin Harmel, Christy Woodson Harvey, and Patti Callahan Henry are 4 longtime friends with more than 70 published books between them. Together, they host Friends and Fiction, with author interviews and fascinating insider talk about publishing and writing, to highlight and support independent bookstores. They discuss the books they've written, the books they're reading now, and the art of storytelling. If you love books and you're curious about the writing world, you're in the right place.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Friends and Fiction Show. I am Patti Callahan Henry.
I'm Kristin Harmel.
And this is Friends and Fiction. We are 4 New York Times bestselling authors, only 2 of us here right now, who gather every week. We pull back the curtain on the writing life and talk about the books you'll cancel your plans to read.
Now, in addition to this web show, we have a Facebook group of more than 340,000 members, a YouTube channel, a podcast, an Instagram feed, a separate book club, and a killer newsletter on Substack. We are a book community like no other.
We love the story behind the story and talking about the moment when a book grabs you and won't let you go. And we are here tonight, just like we have been every single Wednesday night for the past 6 years, to do just that.
You can find out more about us and all we have to offer at friendsandfiction.com.
So tonight, we're going behind the pages of the new novel, Whistler, with author Ann Patchett. We'll talk with her about this moving novel that reminds us of the sweetness and the impermanence of life and the power of connection that defies time. I know she likely needs no introduction to any of you, but here we go anyway. Ann Patchett is the New York Times bestselling author and beloved author of 10 novels, including Bel Canto, The Dutch House, and Tom Lake. She was a guest editor of Best American Short Stories and has written 4 nonfiction books and has also collaborated with an illustrator on 3 children's books.
Ann has won numerous awards, including a National Humanities Medal and the Faulkner Award. Her novel, The Dutch House, was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. She was named one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people in the world, and she's a member of the American Academy of Arts and Letters.
In November of 2011, as if all of that wasn't enough, Ann opened Parnassus Books in Nashville. She has since become a spokesperson for independent booksellers, just like we are here at Friends and Fiction.
Absolutely. And Ann's beautiful new novel, Whistler, was just released on June 2nd. But before we get into Whistler, there are a couple of housekeeping items to talk about. Among all the amazing things we do at Friends and Fiction, we want to make sure that you are not missing out on our newsletter on Substack. There's some incredible content there, including an exclusive bonus Q&A this week with Ann. Just to name a few, recently we've also run exclusive to our Substack interviews with Elizabeth Berg, with Sally Hepworth, and with Lori Gilmore, whose Dream Harbor romance series has taken the book world by storm. And we also occasionally run roundtable chats like the one Mary Kay Andrews just did with 11 Beach Read authors, including a great big giveaway. You do not want to miss out on all of this amazing extra content, so make sure you're subscribed.
And you definitely do not want to forget about the Friends and Fiction 2026 subscription box, exclusively available at Oxford Exchange Bookstore, another indie that we support. So sign up for that for an all-in-one price, and you will get Christy's book on Pub Day, Mary Kay's book on Pub Day, and Kristin's new Pub Day in July. And each autographed book comes with this special Friends and Fiction branded gift that only comes in this package. So visit Oxford Exchange to get yours while supplies last. All right. And then you can get a Ginsu knife. That's what it sounds like. I feel like I'm like, and then you get a double one. All right.
To be clear, it does not come with a Ginsu knife.
No, it does not. It does
out there is like,
Please
oh,
come
I've
with
been
Friends
meaning to know.
Flag. Yeah. All right. Let's dig in. Sean, will you bring Ann on to join us? Hi, Ann.
Hi, Anne.
everybody. Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
You do this once a week for
Yes.
6 years? Do you always interview someone every week?
Yep.
Every week.
For 6 years.
Oh, that's that's insane. That's
Mhm.
insane. And I say that as a bookstore owner who recommends books and interviews authors constantly and exhaustively. That is a real treadmill to be on, ladies.
And we started it during COVID.
Yep.
There's 4 of us. And then the community just grew so big and so devoted
Yeah.
that we just haven't stopped. There's 4 of us, so we share the load
Okay. All right.
every single Wednesday for 6 years.
Um,
And we
And-
have been dying to talk to you.
Oh,
We
thank you. Thank you. We had a very similar thing at the bookstore. We started a video series called the Laydown Diaries, where every week we talked about the books that were being published on Tuesday because people couldn't come into the store. And then when the store reopened, we got so much mail saying, "So glad you're open. Don't stop doing the Laydown Diaries." And we're still doing it every Tuesday.
I know, I watch it
Yep.
every Tuesday.
Okay.
It's really great, especially when the dog is on too.
The dog is always there. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, let's dig into Whistler. So the novel, so beautiful, and as Kristin said, she boohooed at the end.
Thank
The
you.
novel centers on Daphne Fuller, who unexpectedly reunites at the Metropolitan Museum of Art with Eddie Triplett. And what a powerful scene it is. And I have a crush on him. I have a crush on Eddie Triplett.
Mhm.
He was the former stepfather that Daphne hasn't seen since a life-altering event when she was 9.
Mhm.
Now, I was so moved by this reunion and the way it hit her. And when people are jealous of my early read of Whistler, I always say, when they ask about the novel, I say, it's a love story.
Mhm.
So tell us how you describe it.
That's a really interesting description, and I think that it's really true. It's a very romantic
Yep.
friendship. There's a scene in which they're coming home from a wedding that they went to together, and it's really late, and they're standing outside on the streets of New York, and they're trying to say goodnight to each other. And I thought, this is the most romantic thing I've probably ever written in my life. And of course, it's not romance in terms of they are not two people who are going to fall in love or fall into bed or anything like that. But they just love each other so profoundly that it takes on a romantic edge. And I've had those friendships in my life. Like, you just love your friend so much. And you just want to be with that person so much. And it is like the best kind of a romantic moment.
That's exactly how it felt. And it also felt like, in many ways, a deeper love than even
Sure.
some romantic love can be. Like
Sure.
it was a foundational love.
Yes. Yes. I think that's exactly right. Because Daphne knew Eddie probably from the time she was 7 until she was 9. And then after she was 9, she never saw him again, never heard from him again. And you have to remember, this was the pre-internet, pre-cell phone world, where if your mom says you're not going to ever see this person again, you're not going to be able to find him.
Yeah.
It's just done. And so I have this belief that if there's one person in your life when you're a child, even for a short time, who really sees you, who really gets you and believes in you, it can make all the difference in the rest of your life. And that can be such a foundational relationship. And that's who Eddie was for Daphne. So she hasn't spent all this time thinking about him. She just believed he was gone and there was nothing she could do about it. And she was 9 and she grew up, and it didn't shape her thoughts, but it shaped her life. Somebody said to me the other day, why would she have forgotten him? And I said, it's not that she had forgotten him. It's just she had to give up on him. I mean,
Yeah.
he wasn't coming back. There was nothing she could do about it. And when you're a kid and somebody you love, your best friend moves away, your favorite teacher, whatever, you think about them very much for a while, and then you don't.
Yep.
Because your life goes on and there's so many other things going on. And so that is how their relationship started. And then it picks up again when Daphne is 53 and Eddie is in his mid-late 70s, and they run into each other by accident.
Yeah. Oh man. I think also there's something to the fact that it's not just like a neighbor moving away. It's somebody who her mother has basically said, like, wipe him from your mind as if he never existed. And I think she was at that age where she really wanted to please her mother and felt a lot of guilt. And I think it was easier for her to just push him out, which I found really sad, but also really easy to understand how that would have happened.
Right. And it didn't happen overnight. It happened over the course of several years, but by the time, she says, I think by the time she went to college, she had stopped wondering about him altogether.
Which is so sad. I was so happy you gave them this reunion. So here at Friends in Fiction, we love to talk about origin stories, origins of authors, of ideas, of novels, and even of love. And I read in an interview that you said you abandoned another manuscript after more than a year when this story arrived for you. So I would love to know how this story arrived and what it was about this idea that had you shifting gears.
Yeah. So the way I work usually is I plot a book out for a long time, and then I write it. I had been thinking about the first book for quite a while. I had been working on it for a year. I liked it. I liked all the elements of it, but it was not coming together. There was just like a central tension that was missing in the story. I didn't know what was going on. I couldn't figure things out. Really basic things like, who owns this apartment? How did they get here? And I just didn't have the answers. And I decided to throw the book away. And I always have some long essays in the back of my mind that I like to write essays in between novels. And so I had this idea for an essay, and I kind of went straight. My work habits were very good because I had been writing this book for a year. And so I wrote a very long piece for the New Yorker called Glowworms, which was about a trip that my husband and I took to New Zealand. And we went to a glowworms cave, and I completely lost my ever-loving mind because we crawled down underground and got into this boat in a very fast-moving frozen river in a dark hole that has one way in and one way out. And if there's an earthquake, we're all dead. And if somebody freaks out and we go into the river in the dark, we're all dead. And it unsettled me quite a bit. But
just listening to you is unsettling me. Okay.
Yeah, right. I am not going to be invited to be on the tourism board for glowworm caves. Wait, guess what else? When we got out, what we were told, they're not worms. They were maggots.
Oh, God.
Prepared glow maggots. Vomiting.
I guess glow maggot doesn't sound good on the brochure.
It doesn't. And they vomit maggot bile and catch tiny insects that they eat. It was a really, really bad trip. However,
sounds disturbing.
Yeah. So right before we went to New Zealand, there were three important beings in our lives who were all about to die. One was my husband's mother, who was 102. One was one of my best friends, Jim Fox, who was 84. And the third was our dog, who was very ill. And we were just debating, do we go? Do we not go? This is all in the essay. We decided to go. And then they all three died. They all three died in a matter of weeks, before we were leaving. So with those three deaths in mind, we go to New Zealand, and I get in this cave of maggots. And it's
worms.
The symbolism doesn't. You go underground with the maggots, okay?
Yeah.
In the dark, and but but my friend who died was a man named Jim Fox. And this book, Whistler, is dedicated to Jim Fox.
Yes.
So when I was writing this essay, I realized that I could really get Jim's voice. And I thought, I want to write a book, not about me, not about Jim, a character that is not Jim, but is Jim's voice, and also put all the love I had for Jim in the book, all the love Jim had for me in the book. And that's how it happened. That's how it came together.
So Eddie Triplett has the voice of the voice and the feel of Jim?
Yes, in a lot of ways. I mean, he's not. That's it. I'm quick to say somebody can really inspire a character and not be a character. But the energy, the life force of Eddie Triplett was my friend Jim Fox, who died on his 85th birthday and had a very nice death in a lot of ways.
I think I would have really liked to know your friend. I mean, Eddie was such a you just couldn't help but love him. It sounds like your friend was the same way. I'm sorry for that loss, but what a beautiful way to honor him.
Were either of you ever HarperCollins authors? Yes. Okay, so Jim Fox was head legal counsel at HarperCollins.
Okay.
So if you ever had gotten into some trouble, which I had gotten into, and that's how I met Jim, and there we go.
Oh my! Oh wow!
Luckily, I never had to talk to Jim.
Good. Good. You would have loved him, but it would have.
I would have loved him, but I'm glad I had no need for him.
It would have spelled bad news. Yeah.
Yes.
If you're in Jim Fox's office, it's because you're in trouble.
Something's right. No, and in the book, you gave Daphne 3 fathers, or I should say, in quotes, 3 fathers. And I was actually especially moved by the scene in the book where she's talking with her sister and wondering why they weren't more messed up. And her sister makes the point that they were loved. And they were, imperfectly in some cases, but especially they were loved by Eddie and by their biological father, Buddy, who I think did his best. Can you talk a little bit about giving her these 3 dads?
And also by their mom. I think a lot of the arc of this novel is Daphne coming to see her mother as an adult. That she's an adult and her mother's an adult, and she is letting go of the childhood judgments she had against her mother, and she finds real compassion for her mother. So a lot of people have asked me about this because I also had 3 fathers. And I have written about this. And I thought, I can't give her 3 fathers because then everybody's going to think it's me. And then I thought, I don't care. I don't care at all.
Yeah.
So I knew that this was Daphne's story about reuniting with a stepfather she had lost at 9, which meant if she had a stepfather at 9, she needed to have a biological father. So now we're up to 2 fathers, and she's 9 years old. But the story takes place when she's 53. And I know that her mother, Abigail, is not the kind of person who is going to just cool her heels for 44 years. She is going to have another husband, maybe a couple other husbands. So she winds up with 3 fathers who were not in any way like my own 3 fathers, but we're good men in their own ways.
Yeah. And each one of them, which leads me to talk about this good-heartedness that was in the novel. When I was reading it, I was with a mutual friend of ours. And I said, what's striking me as I'm reading is this deep sense of good-heartedness. There's a generosity of spirit in the characters. Even when someone could be chiding or insulting, they almost always give the other character the benefit of the doubt, even of goodness. And your friend and mine said, well, that's because Anne is like that. So how much of your life do you think found its way, besides 3 dads, and you've told us so much, but of your kind of tender-hearted way of looking at the world? And do you think it's more so than in your other novels?
I don't think it's more so.
Okay.
I don't know. Who knows? But, you can only see through the eyes that you have.
Yep.
And even if you're writing fiction that is in no way attached to your own life, it still is.
Yep.
When I look back on my earlier novels, I can tell you all the ways in which they're autobiographical, and no one would ever think that they were autobiographical because the scenery, the costumes, the settings were so far removed from my own life. And I did that because I didn't want anyone to think I was writing autobiographical novels.
Yep.
But at some point, you get older, if you still are lucky enough to be doing this, and you just think, I just want to write the book. I just want to write the right book. And I don't really care if somebody gets in and picks it apart and says, oh, well, the character did this and she did this. I have a great friend, the novelist Kevin Wilson.
Oh, he's
And
so great.
I love Kevin. And Kevin and I have been friends for a really, really long time. I've known him since he got out of college. And we often take speaking gigs together because it's a way for us to see each other. You know, somebody will say, do you guys want to go to Cleveland and give a talk at a library? And like, maybe I wouldn't want to do it by myself, but if I could do it with Kevin, sure. And we take these trips. And often people will ask him, he writes a lot of female narratives. And people will say, well, who is this character based on? And he'll say, me. And then somebody will say, well, yeah, but then who is the dad based on? Well, me. Who are the kids then? Who are the kids based on? Me. They're all me. And he just says that consistently for everything he writes. He's like, every single person in this book is an aspect of me. And so I find that an incredibly comforting way to look at it.
Yeah.
Like, what part is true? What part is you? All of it.
All of it. Which also is scary because there's parts of us that end up in there in other ways. I mean, even in the not good-hearted parts. Yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, when I had, wait, what book was this? I had just finished Commonwealth, which was the one really autobiographical novel that I wrote. And I was interviewing Zadie Smith at the bookstore, and she had just finished Swing Time, which seemed to me to be a very autobiographical novel, not knowing much about Zadie, but knowing as much as anybody else. And I asked her about it, and she said something that really changed my life. She said, it is autobiographical, but I'm not the daughter. I'm the mother.
Oh.
And the mother in that book is really tough. I said, oh, that's such a surprise. And she said, I am not that mother in my life. That's the mother I am afraid of being.
Oh, wow.
And she said, autobiographical fiction isn't what happened to you. It's what you are afraid of doing, afraid of having happened to you, or the thing that you most want to have happen to you. It's the things we focus on in our mind. And I thought, God, I wish somebody had told me that 30 years ago. It was so helpful. It's not, so something can feel so autobiographical, not because it happened, but because you were afraid of it. The book that I wrote after that was called The Dutch House. And I mean, when Zadie said that to me on stage, I thought, what is the thing I am most afraid of in my life? I am
inside myself coming to expression, right?
Right. I am afraid of being a bad stepmother.
Oh,
I am not. I'm actually a great stepmother. But my darkest fear is that I would do something that would hurt my stepchildren.
Oh,
And because I had a lot of step parents and I lived through fractured families. And when I married my husband, his kids were like, my gosh, by the time we got married, they were in their 30s. I wasn't going to mess up their lives.
Yeah.
But it really mattered to me. And I thought, I'm going to write a book about a terrible stepmother because I know my stepmother was fantastic, the nicest person I've ever known in my life. And I've been a very good step parent, but I know that fear so perfectly. that I could tap into it and write a very convincing book, So then if somebody says, well, who are you? Well, I guess I'm the bad stepmother.
Wow.
Um,
My
oh, I
last novel, the mom left when she was 9. And I'm proud of the fact that I've never left my kids for more than, they're grown now, but
Yeah,
for a long weekend. And I have chill bumps like down my arms and my body because I could write it because I wouldn't do it.
that's right.
But
But you
what if
knew.
I had? How terrible would that be?
Yeah, and you knew
Man,
that
wow.
somewhere it was inside of you. Like the thought had crossed your mind, even if it was only for 20 minutes on a Monday 7 years ago, whatever.
Yep.
You could tap into that. All right, so here's my pro tip. Listen to The Dutch House. If you like audiobooks,
Okay.
Tom Hanks reads it.
Yeah.
He does a killer job, as one can imagine Tom Hanks would do. But it's about a mother who leaves her children.
Yeah. And try to make that sympathetic.
Yep.
I did read it. So yes.
Oh,
it's
okay.
amazing.
Yeah.
I did.
Right.
I've read everything you've written, Ann.
Yeah.
I'm a super fan.
Go on. And the first time I wrote The Dutch House twice, because
Wow,
the first
what?
time the mother who left was a sympathetic character and it did not work. You cannot write a book about a mother who leaves her children the way men leave their children all the time and have her be a sympathetic character. The father, Buddy Zabriskie, in Whistler leaves. He's a sympathetic character, but I could not write a woman who left her children and have her be a sympathetic character.
It makes me think of The Hours by Michael Crichton.
Yes, exactly.
Like we can have some empathy. We can understand it, but she's definitely.
We don't like her.
Nope.
We don't like her.
Not. Nope.
Yeah.
And I get the comments. I don't like her. I'm like, I didn't ask you to like her.
That's right. It's
I
not
didn't.
that's not the business we're in.
That's not my job.
Yep.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, going back to the book for a minute, I feel like we would be we need to talk about Whistler himself, the horse. So we have
Mhm.
Daphne and Eddie's story, among many others, but there's also a story inside the story about a horse named Whistler.
Right.
So Eddie tells young Daphne the story of Whistler at a crucial moment in a snowstorm that really changes both of their lives. Do you think it was easier for him to tell her a story than to have a hard conversation? In other words, did this inner story do some of the emotional work for the larger one in the circumstances they were in?
So I don't have children. And one of the things that always I never get right about children is I don't know where they are at different times. Like what age do they? I'm always asking people this. Maybe you can tell me. At what age does a child go an entire day without crying?
You would think, having had a child, I would know that. but I
No one knows. People are like,
10. I'm going to say 10.
wow. Oh, I
Wait,
mean,
a whole day without crying? Your kids cried until younger than that.
No, I don't know. I'm thinking about my grandchildren. Bridget's almost 8 and she cries at least once a day.
Does
wow. See?
Or a temper tantrum. I count that as crying.
that
Sure.
is interesting. Okay.
Well, you have an extraordinary son who was born at 14. So
It makes the delivery harder, but it's worth it.
it's also true.
Yeah. So, so here's Eddie and Daphne, and they are talking and they're close and they're good, but things aren't going well, and they're afraid. And he thinks, what are you supposed to do in this moment? He doesn't have children. He doesn't know. He's like, okay, I'm going to tell her. I'm going to tell her story. I'm going to tell her story. What story am I going to tell her? Okay. I got a book proposal today because he works in publishing. I got a book proposal. I'm going to tell her this story that I read this afternoon. And he starts to tell her this story and he realizes he has made a critical mistake.
Yes.
Like, this is not the story to tell to a 9-year-old. And the 9-year-old is falling apart, but at the same time she's like, you have to finish this story. You have to tell me what happened. So for me, it really is about how you don't know what you're supposed to do with a kid at different ages, and
Yeah.
getting in over your head in storytelling. And I'm just thinking about this in real time as I'm saying it, but I can remember my mother and stepfather taking us to movies that they had no business taking us to when we were little, because they couldn't get a babysitter or there wasn't any money or whatever. And so they would just hold their hands over our eyes at certain points when things were happening that we should not be seeing. Because by that point, you're in the theater. What are you going to do? You're not going to leave. And I think that I just tapped into some of that energy of okay, we're gonna go to the movies. I'm gonna tell you the story. This is what we're gonna. Oh no, 9. This doesn't work for a 9-year-old. But here we are, and it turns out that it was in a way kind of the salvation story for them.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, absolutely. And I feel, to me, reading that, it felt like it was so Eddie. Like he realized he was wrong, but somehow he salvaged it anyhow. Like it
Right.
was the right story to tell. And it was something that she needed to hear at that moment. And it felt like it's something that she took with her for the rest of her life.
And then they both became Whistler for one another.
They did.
You know,
They
they
did. Oh,
it just Whistler is emblematic of their love for one another. I will come back for you.
The
you,
return.
oh,
Oh
you
my
were
goodness.
absolutely right.
Oh, I just got to smile. Okay.
I know. Okay. All right. Now, before we keep going, and there is so much more, I want to remind all of you out there watching and listening to rush out and buy your copies of Whistler. The perfect place to do that is in the Friends and Fiction shop on bookshop.org. So you will not only be getting it at a discount, but all of your purchases there support our show, our guests, and independent bookstores nationwide. So Bookshop has raised an astounding $50 million for indie booksellers. And as you all know, Anne right here is an indie bookseller. So shop there online when you cannot get out to an independent store in person.
Love that.
All right. Yeah, that's when we first started 6 years ago, and everything was shut down for COVID. We were like, what are the indies going to do? And so we started featuring them.
I love that.
All right. In the novel, there is this quote that I read and underlined and then read again. And now I'm going to quote it to you. Being a writer, can we ever escape it? Even if we made the promise at 9 years old. So it's a question we talk a lot about around here, this sense of destiny in being a writer. Now, being a bookstore owner, an advocate for indies and books, and an author of fiction, nonfiction, and children's books and essays, I would love to know more about your origin story. How did you become a writer, and were you always?
I was always a writer, and I always say there are 2 really extraordinary things about me. I always knew what I wanted to do with my life, and I got to do it. And that just puts me in the tiniest subset of human beings. I never had to worry about what I was going to do with my life. And also, fortunately, I never wanted anything. I never thought I want to be rich, or I want to have a big house, or I want to spend half the year in Paris, where it's like, all I really want to do is write. And my greatest dream was that someday I would be able to support myself off of writing. And I have never updated that dream. I mean, the fact that I make a living doing this every day is my astonishment and my joy. And also that I didn't have to go to law school and drop out and pay off student loans. And, it's like, I didn't think, oh, well, what I really want to do is I want to try and be a writer. It's like, no, that's all I'm going to do. So it worked out very, very well for me.
That's extraordinary. All of us on Friends of Fiction had a different career. Now, some of them, like Kristin, were doing journalism, but all of us did something else before.
What did you do?
I was a pediatric nurse.
Were you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Yeah, for a long time. Yeah,
that's great. Do you ever miss
I love the different, like the merging lanes, and we all end up here.
Yeah.
And for me, I always knew I wanted to be a novelist, and I only went into journalism because it seemed like the clearest route to that end goal, you know? I
Mhm.
wrote my first novel when I was 23, like working as a journalist to support myself while I did that. So I think I'm similar to you, although it took a while to become self-sustaining, I would say.
Yeah. Well, and I it would be a far stretch to say that I was a journalist, but I made my living doing magazine and newspaper work for a long time, which to my mind completely counted. And I wrote I just wrote junk. I just wrote absolute trash. I wrote for Bridal Guide. I wrote for Glamour. I wrote for 17. I did, every single thing under the sun.
Yeah.
Because it paid the bills, and then I could go home and write, or I was already at home. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Exactly how I started. Exact same thing. All right. So, Anne, I am so thrilled that I'm going to be coming to your bookstore, Parnassus, on the end, actually at the very beginning of my book tour in July. And I know it's a regular for Patti too. So, has your work with the bookstore,
Yeah.
which is one of the finest in the country, changed the way you write? And then vice versa, has your experience as a novelist impacted how you run the store?
The thing that the bookstore has changed is the way I read. It has absolutely shattered my reading life. I used to be somebody who read Henry James, and I would get up and think, wait, no, I never read Bleak House. I'm going to go back and I'm going to start reading Dickens again. I'm going to, like, that's who I was. And I am not that person anymore. And I'm not the buyer, so I don't have that responsibility, but I interview a lot of people. And so I read a lot for that.
Yeah.
And then we have a first editions club,
Yeah.
and I pick all those books. So I'm always reading. Right now I'm reading for November. That's how far out we are. And so when somebody says, "What are you reading?" and I'm like, "Why? It doesn't make any difference.
It doesn't matter."
I'm always going way far ahead. And it's been so wonderful because I have read things that I never would have read. I read in a completely different way. Like, for example, 2026 is the strongest year for fiction I have seen since we opened the bookstore 15 years ago.
Oh,
Unbelievable novels in 2026.
great.
Oh,
But I read almost like I read the newspaper, and you can see if you're just reading contemporary fiction that's going to be published this year, which I'm sure you do an awful lot of, you can really see trends. You can see people coming down in the same places, writing about the same things. It's astonishing. And then you have to backtrack it because that book was probably in production for a year. The author was probably writing it 1, 2, 3 years before that. And yet here we are coming to some very similar places.
wow. And we see novels early for the show, and you're on stage and people say, "What are you reading?" And you buzz out like you've never
Sure.
read a book.
Sure. Yeah. And I
Um,
always try to go out on a stage with a handful of recommendations of books that people can actually buy.
yes.
Because what I want to say to everyone is I think the best book of 2026 is coming out in October, and it is Iyun Lee's Music Against the Night.
Oh, I
You
can't
heard
wait.
it. You heard it here first.
Okay.
It is
I can't wait.
astonishing. And that is so thrilling. If I didn't own a bookstore, I might never have read that book. But another thing that's really frustrating is I put books down. So much of my reading life is reading 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 pages of something that I wind up thinking, I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm not going to finish it. And I hate that loss of completing a book, but there's no way in the world I could finish everything I start.
And then you have these story fragments, like
Yes.
around, because you're like, wait, what was
Oh
that
my-
from? And you're like, that's the one I put down.
Absolutely.
I know
Or
they're like
you just,
little software fragments.
it's so true. And you think, wait, that did that happen to someone I know?
Was
But
that
that
a
must
weird dream I had?
it must
No.
have been in a book, but I don't have any idea what book it was. Yeah. No, that's really messy. Very messy.
Oh,
All
boy.
right. Speaking of books and writing and it being everything you ever wanted to do, before we let you out of here, we would be remiss saying we have so many emerging writers and beginning writers in our community. If you had one piece of writing advice to leave on the desk for us, what would it be?
Love to write.
Yes.
I think that there are so many people who want to have written and they want to be a writer, but
Yeah.
you have to want to write. And
Yeah.
I always say it's like playing the cello. Nobody picks up a cello and thinks, book me at Carnegie Hall tomorrow.
Yeah.
And yet people write all the time and think, well, I finished my first draft. I'm ready for publication. It's not just that you have to write it. You have to write it and work on it and throw it away and start something new and write it and work on it and throw it. You have to love to learn. You have to love to write, and you have to love to read and see writing and reading as walking on two legs, just reading as a learner. How is this person making me feel this way? I want to try this. I'm going to try it. I'm going to throw it away. I'm going to try something else. I'm going to throw it away. I'm going to work because I love the work, not because I have some romantic idea about what the end result is going to be. And let me just say, the sweetheart story of all time is The Correspondent by Virginia Evans.
Yeah.
That was her 8th book.
Yep.
She wrote 7 books. She couldn't get an agent for, much less get an editor to read. She is 39 years old. She has 2 kids. Yep. She and her husband are poor people, or they were up until recently.
Not anymore.
And she just kept getting up to write because that's who she was. And she wouldn't know who she was in the world unless she kept doing that. And she just won the Penn Hemingway for first novel. It's just so heartening. And I think that's what it's about. You're just going to keep doing it. I remember when I was a waitress at Fridays when I was 25 and thinking, if I was a waitress for the rest of my life, would I still write? Yes. Would I still go home and, if I never sold a book? Yeah. I just saw Kathy, you know who Kathy Mattea is?
Yeah.
She's a great country singer. Yeah. And I saw Kathy last night, and she had been a waitress at Fridays just before I became a waitress at the same Fridays. And we were having this conversation about that experience. And, she was always going to write songs. She was always going to sing. And you make it or you don't make it. But that really isn't what the story is about. It's about you make art because you don't have a choice.
Absolutely. Oh, that's such good advice. Okay, Anne, we are sadly reaching the end here. I wish we could talk to you for hours more. But before you go, can you tell readers how to catch up with you on tour and where they can connect with you online?
Yes. So I personally have no social media. I don't even have a cell phone, friends, but I have a bookstore and they do a ton of social media and they keep up annpatchett.com. So the whole book tour is on annpatchett.com, and people who are not me look at it and keep it up to date.
And people
That's wonderful.
I love it. I remember reading your op-ed about email and laughing so hard. Like I don't want to know. I never want anybody to give me the hours I spent on these 2 things, email and carpool. I do not want to see how my life dribbled away in those 2 areas.
Yeah.
Anne, thank you so much for joining us and talking about the things that matter, not only in this story, but as writers. I have so much to think about now about autobiographical fiction. And
Yeah, I was going to say, you're going to be thinking about Zadie Smith. That's who you're going to be thinking about.
I am.
It's
and
amazing.
You and the tenderness of this novel. So thank you for being with us on the Friends and Fiction Show.
Thank you. And thank you for doing this work and holding up our community and getting the word out. I really appreciate your mission and your work.
Thanks.
Thank you for saying that. That means a lot to us. It's why we do it. I mean, it's we feel very proud to be part of this community, and I think we want to make sure everyone has a chance to be seen. All right, so everyone out there, thank you, Ann. All right, so be sure to tune in next week when Kristy and I will welcome Lisa C. to discuss her new novel, Daughters of the Sun and Moon. That show will air live on the Friends and Fiction Facebook page and YouTube channel on Wednesday, June 17th at 7 p.m. Eastern. And it will be published to our podcast for your listening pleasure on Friday, June 19th.
Thanks to all of you for being here, and we will see you next week.
See you next week. Thanks for tuning in to Friends and Fiction, hosted by New York Times bestselling authors Mary Kay Andrews, Patti Callahan Henry, Kristy Woodson Harvey, and Kristin Harmel. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, subscribe to our Substack newsletter, and catch us on Facebook and YouTube, where a new episode of our show airs every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can also listen to Friends and Fiction wherever you get your podcasts. Find out about all this and more at friendsandfiction.com. We're so glad you're here.